Today we're offering, presenting the awards for the 2019-2020 Research Recognition Awards recipients. And this is the first event to mark the beginning of Research Scholarship Days 2021. And I'm just going to paste into the chat. I hope everyone can see that. The schedule for all of the Research and Scholarship Days events that are happening over the next 2 weeks. This is a really odd environment that we continue to operate in here, doing all of this remotely, but we've been overwhelmed in a good way by the response to Research and Scholarship Days this week. There's lots of great events. There's over 80 student presentations. There's another presentation of Research Recognition Award winners for the current year next week. And I encourage everyone to take a look at the schedule and hopefully find some time to tune in to a variety of the activities that are happening on campus. This work happens because of the great work of all of the volunteers that are on these organizing committees, and I'd like to thank all of them. Too many to mention the full list of here, but thank you all. Many of the people sit on the Research and Scholarship Committee. I'd like to particularly thank Shalina and Julia, who've been working tirelessly on all of the details of making this happen in the current week as well. But today we're here for the Research Recognition Awards, and these are a set of awards that were instituted 4 years ago at Mount Royal. As we grew our research enterprise, we thought it was important to highlight some of the great work that's happening on campus. Whenever you have awards like this, it's hard to select from the great list of things that are happening on campus. It's a daunting process for the selection committee. The awards are managed out of the Office of Research Scholarship and Community Engagement. And there are 6 awards, and they're meant to recognize the outstanding achievements of scholars across the full range of career stages. The awards are designed to celebrate faculty members who are making extraordinary contributions to their own academic disciplines or professions, as well as contributions to student learning and community engagement. And we've seen significant growth in research and scholarship at Mount Royal over the past several years. One indicator, it's only one indicator, but one indicator is we're up about 500% in terms of our external support from tri-agencies over the past 5 years. And it doesn't mean that all faculty members want or should be getting tri-agency awards, but it's one indicator and a useful one for us to use externally. So we're here today to hear from the 2019-2020 recipients. And normally we would have done this last March or April. And if you can cast your mind back to that time last year, we were just in the process of shutting things down. And I don't know about you, but I thought we might be shut down for 2 or 3 weeks and we'd reschedule this event. And then as it stretched out, we thought, oh, we'll schedule it into the fall. And of course, that wasn't possible. So I'd like to thank all of the recipients today for their patience. We're a year late in gathering you around the table here. Just so everyone that's watching on the live stream knows, the recipients all received their certificates, framed certificates in the mail it was back around Christmas time in the current academic year. And we're finally getting around to recognizing all of them formally here today. So before we move into the presentations, I just want to share a slide with you, and this is the list of all nominees in 2019-2020, and I think it's important to recognize all of them. Sorry, my screen is giving me a little challenge here. Doesn't want to share. Bear with me 1 second. There we go. I think it's finally coming up here. There. So this is a list of all of the nominees for 2019, 2020. And again, the selection committee had a difficult time in making the final selections. You can see all of the names here. I just want to recognize last year's selection committee: Adi Yarsma, Jill Parnell, Jacqueline Masabende, Karen Atkins-Ledbetter, Nick Strzokowski, and Sarah Hewitt. And so you can see all of the people there on the list. And today we have the recipients of those awards, but I do want to make special mention of just how significant it is to be nominated in one of these categories. They're peer nominations, and again, it indicates the high quality of work that's happening on campus. Okay. So we'll move to, we've asked the recipients to make short presentations to give you a sense of their research work. And one of the hardest things for a researcher, I think, is to talk about something that excites them to the level that their own research does in 5 or so minutes, but that's what we've asked them to do today. So we'll move into those presentations so that you're hearing from them and not me. The first is the Community Engagement Award, and this commends a researcher or scholar who's created meaningful research and scholarship partnerships with an external community. They demonstrate significant engagement with the community partner, from problem definition through to knowledge integration and mobilization. And it highlights research and scholarship that addresses issues facing our communities. And the recipient of the Community Engagement Award is Lynn Lefebvre. Congratulations, Lynn, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. I will then share my screen and give a short presentation. Okay, I believe we can see that. So I'm very honored to receive the Community Engagement Award for research and share with you some of the work that I have done. So community engaged research is a balance between academic outcomes and serving the community with the research where it's been done. And I'm interested in physical health and well-being, and much of our behaviors today are shaped by our experiences as children. So over 50% of Canadian children are part of a childcare environment. And working with childcare programs provides a powerful opportunity to shape healthy behaviors with a large proportion of the future adult population. So my research is grounded in Dan Schroeder's and colleagues' consolidated framework for implementation of research. And this recognizes that individuals working towards best practices are influenced by their own beliefs and abilities. But this also recognizes that there's an immediate structure where they work, and that influences what they can do. And this is all nested then within the political and policy of funding and governmental guidelines. And all of these things then together constrict how easily or how well they can adapt new information. So we then apply our coaching and our supportive elements to adopt best practices while recognizing the complexity of this decision-making. There are many layers in community-engaged research, and our implementation science framework helps us to direct the results of the research findings into professional practice effectively. In the white margins, you can kind of see what research projects we're doing right now and how we're working with the community. And in our short time together, I will touch on a few of my project examples. So the adage, we do better when we know better, is important. Educators can't create healthy environments if they don't know what their environment looks like. So working with the community, with stakeholders, we engaged stakeholders from government, childcare directors and educators, parents, nutrition and physical activity experts, licensing officers, and childcare academics to help us develop a survey through an evidence-based approach. And that resulted in CHEERS. And this survey looks at the healthy eating and active environments in childcare. While we were working with our community, one of our key informants made it clear that we shouldn't just collect data. We needed to share this information with the community so they could benefit as well. So the paper version of CHEERS was slow to get back and slow to give feedback to the childcare programs. And it was also kind of laborious to give feedback to them. So that resulted in an e-health innovation. We looked to put our survey online and collect data, which is in and of itself not that innovative. The innovative component was that we developed an algorithm to provide tailored, individualized feedback to the respondents for their childcare environment. The array that we developed has over 6,000 variable messages used to build the report. This 5-page report contains best practice messages, what's going well and what could be worked on. It has links to Alberta Health Services resources and is delivered to the respondents within 5 minutes of them completing their survey. So we engaged with the community once we developed this to see what they thought of it. And we studied their experiences with it and looked at this across all different areas within Alberta, small communities, large communities, rural centers, just to see what they thought. And then we refined and developed the intervention a little bit more clearly. We worked in the communities and developed virtual communities of practice so that we could help them to connect with each other and work on CHEERS. And then we also worked with them to see, with their self-report, was the physical activity that they were reporting on accurate with accelerometers. And that was good for us. And again, we addressed the community by providing a report back to the childcare program and to each parent to show them what kind of physical activity was going on in the childcare. We're currently working on we're in the second year of a 3-year project that lasts 10 months. We have education modules, coaching programs, and community of practice within 7 cities across Alberta. So just to close then, community engaged research allows communities to help set the research agenda, perceive value for the research for themselves, develop a relationship of trust with their academic partner, and improve the adoption of best practices into professional practices. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Lynn, and thanks for staying within the time frame. You provided a lot of information there in a short time about a great project. I think I'd just like to let the rest of the audience know that that Lynn holds one of the largest external grants right now too to support this work. The last agreement piece of this is over $700,000, and there was additional funds on top of that previously. So congratulations on that work, and congratulations on the Research Recognition Award. Our next category of award is one that I'm particularly excited about, and it's the Emerging Scholar Award. And this award celebrates excellence in research and scholarship for a faculty member at the rank of assistant professor at MRU. It focuses on research and scholarship that demonstrates impact and originality by producing new knowledge in the nominee's discipline or field. And it's an exciting category for me because it's really our next generation of researchers at MRU, and we're seeing significant growth in this area. So significant that in the current year, we had a tie for this award. So there are 2 awardees being presented awards today. The first who you'll hear from today is Gabrielle Lindstrom, And unfortunately, yeah, for us anyway, Gabrielle is now at that other institution a little further up Crowchild Trail, but was a recipient of this award last year when she was still here at MRU. So we've invited her back virtually here to make a presentation on her research. Congratulations and welcome, Gabrielle.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, Michael. Oki Nistuni Danigo Tsabinaki. Greetings. My name is Gabrielle Lindstrom. I am very honored to receive this award and to be recognized by my peers. I also realize that in accepting this award and being chosen for this award, I recognize that other equally deserving scholars were passed up. So I would just like to honor the work that they do. Rather than provide a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation, I'd like to talk with you about the work that I do. I'm interested in building relationships. My research is focused on not only reframing how relationships are conceptualized, intercultural relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples, not only how those are conceptualized, but how they're enacted within institutes of higher education and within our classrooms. And so first and foremost, my research is really geared towards transforming relationships. And so one of the projects that I would like to speak to this morning or this afternoon is my research around Blackfoot Resilience. So the purpose in reframing how we think about resilience is really born out of my own lived experience as an Indigenous woman here in Canada. Oftentimes, getting to university, making it through university is seen as something that is out of the norm for Indigenous people. It's seen as this great feat that I've overcome all of these barriers. And many times people would tell me, well, geez, Gabrielle, you're so resilient in that you've made it out of the reserve, you've made it in Western society, you gained your PhD, you've earned it, all of these things, right? And so I've been defined as resilient. And for me, that was a bit of a patronizing thing, because it seemed as if it diminished all of the suffering that my ancestors went through and all of the things that I went through as an Indigenous woman, simply to be called resilient. Resilience is, for me, is not a response to colonization. Resilience is something that we've always had as Indigenous people, right from the moment of conception. We were resilient 1,000 years ago, and we are resilient now. So my research is really about challenging the social and systemic discourses that represent Indigenous people within a deficit perspective, and to offer a starting point for educational and social systems to collaborate around the creation of an Indigenous resiliency framework. So I'm interested in better understanding what are those theoretical intersections between transformative learning theory within an adult learning context and Blackfoot perspectives on resilience. Also, too, what are the pedagogical approaches and teaching methods that foster learning resilience in both Indigenous and non-Indigenous post-secondary adult learners? My research is born out of this notion that what is good for Indigenous learners, being taught with compassion, being taught in ways that maintain human dignity, these are good for all learners. We all want to feel cared for as we're learning, and we all want to feel as if who we are matters, that our identity matters, and that culture does indeed matter and is a determining factor in success. So resilience is now a common term, but I want to stop and think a little bit more critically about what that means, because it carries two definitions. And this is what my research is about. So it's that capacity to quickly overcome difficulties. It's this toughness, or the ability of an object to spring back into shape. However, it's also used again to refer to individuals who've overcome hard times. And if it's looked at in this way, resilience is often seen as an individual outcome, and some people are seen as more resilient than others. However, it tends to neglect that strong social support system, that collective notion that we are never resilient on our own. We are only as resilient as the community around us and the people around us. So to be Indigenous is what my research is finding, is to be Indigenous is to be resilient. And so what does that look like? So learning for Indigenous people, being resilient is about learning our language, despite the continued push to eradicate our languages. Being resilient is about participating in ceremonies. It's about our songs. It's about our prayers. It's about our stories and our dances, which have contributed to our resilience and will continue to contribute to our resilience. It's about our relationships, because we nurture one another's we nurture one another's resilience in our relationships. It's about always showing generosity and kindness despite not always receiving it. It's about awareness and connection to everything around us. And resilience is about inspiration, about the many reasons why we go on. And resilience is not a process, and resilience is not an outcome, I should say. Resilience is a process, and it is a story that gets told in many different ways and in many different contexts. And resilience lives in us through the names that are gifted to us by our community. And we share resilience as a collective. And knowing our own resilience means learning from the experience we've had with our own suffering and what that means. And so in today's world, we're very consumed with avoiding discomfort and avoiding suffering. With Indigenous people, resilience is really born out of suffering. You cannot be resilient without having experienced some kind of suffering. And so my research is really about that. It's researching with my community, it's researching with elders, and it's also it's harnessing the power of our young people and their voices. And so it's publishing with my students, student research assistants, and really is about envisioning a future where we can really come together and begin to see one another as human beings who have their own sense of power and their own sense of dignity. So in a nutshell, that's my resiliency research, and 5 minutes is very short, so I'll leave it there.
Thanks so much, Gabrielle. And 5 minutes is very short. The work that you're doing on resilience as it applies to Indigenous communities and beyond, and the notion of a community-based resilience is really exciting. And I think you have a tremendous career ahead of you in this particular area and everywhere it takes you. So congratulations on being one of the recipients in the Emerging Scholar Award. Our next Emerging Scholar Award goes to John Mee. I've already described the award, so I'll turn it right over to John to share a little bit about his research. John?
Thanks, Mike. And I echo Gabrielle's comments that I really want to acknowledge all the other applicants, nominees for this award. And it was especially humbling to be co-awarded with Gabrielle. It's hard to when I heard about the award, it was hard to imagine that what I was doing was of the same caliber as the people you hear about, and especially Gabrielle's work. So congratulations to her and to all the other nominees and awardees. So I will share my screen here. I presented I've prepared a presentation to talk about what I do. So I'm a fish biologist well, I'm an evolutionary biologist who studies fish. And you could also describe me as a biodiversity researcher. So my main interest is understanding the sources and how biodiversity arises and persists. And so I'm an evolutionary biologist, and largely I use genetic and molecular biology tools to do my research. And so one of the main questions I'm interested in is related to this question. So what's the gene for that? And so if you look within a population, individuals are different. In this little image I have here under my slide, some individuals are different colors, and I'm just noticing that some have ears and some don't. So maybe that's a difference between individuals that you could try to ask the question, what's the gene for that? And people are interested in asking this question in medical contexts and so on. And one of the things that I'm discovering, and that the community who studies this is discovering, is that in many ways this is a nonsensical and misleading question. There is no gene for that, and that question doesn't make a lot of sense in many ways. So like I said, I study fish. Largely because they're amazingly diverse. There are 32,000 species of fish in the world, and they live in many different kinds of habitats, and it's sort of an inspiring amount of diversity. This is just an image by Ray Troll of some of the diversity found within the Amazon River. And I chose a freshwater river picture because I'm a freshwater fish biologist. I don't study oceans generally. And the species I'm going to talk about today that I'm spending a lot of my time working on is it's called a Brook Stickleback, found in lakes, mainly lakes, some rivers and streams in Alberta and all over Canada and North America, actually. And the difference among individuals that I'm interested in is the presence and absence of, can you see there we go, of these spines on their belly. These are called their pelvic spines. And they're called pelvic because they actually share a developmental pathway with our pelvis in mammals and all tetrapods, all land vertebrates. So the same genes that control the development of this spine on the pelvis of the fish are the same genes that control the development of our hind limbs, our legs, and the same ones that are involved in the development of hind legs in mice, for example. And so for example, the same gene that is known to give rise to clubfoot in humans is the same one that has caused a mutation in that gene caused the loss of hind limbs in manatees, for example. So they're all connected. And so you can look in populations in Alberta, and these are on the left and right here are these little images of fish that I've stained with a stain that makes bones pinkish, this pinkish red color. And so some individuals in the population completely lack this pelvic structure. This would be like an individual completely lacking a pelvis, like a manatee. And on the right here is an individual with a full pelvic structure, including these big spines. Well, in this individual, they're fairly small. But and then in the middle here is just sort of a graphical or an image representing these differences between individuals having no pelvises, complete pelvises, and then these intermediate types in between. And so the question I'm asking is, well, what is the genetic basis of this variation? And we know that there's a gene involved in this. I told you about this gene causing the loss of hind limbs in manatees and clubfoot in humans. And that gene is actually called PIDX1. And in some stickleback species, the three-spine stickleback, it's known that gene is involved in the loss of these pelvic spines. But in the species I'm studying, Brook stickleback, it's unknown. And in other species, it's not this same gene. And so this is getting at why asking the question, what's the gene for that, becomes nonsensical, because it depends on what species you're talking about, what context you're talking about. And so I go out to lakes and rivers and do things like set these little minnow traps, which you can sort of see in the water here. And we collect minnows and take their little samples of their fins and sequence their DNA and get all sorts of genetic information, as well as measure their bodies and count their spines and measure their spines and all sorts of things like that. And then we get some genetic data, which is depicted here, which I'm not going to spend a lot of time describing the methods about how we get this, because it would take way more than 5 minutes. But basically what this is showing is this is a representation of an entire genome of a stickleback, and then the height of each of these sort of little peaks here, this is called a Manhattan plot because it kind of looks like the skyline of a big city like Manhattan with some skyscrapers sticking up. And the height of a skyscraper tells you in that location on a chromosome is a gene that is statistically associated with this difference in presence or absence of spines. So we can ask, so what's going on in that location? Is there a gene there that might be causing this? And if we blow up that region, so this is a representation on the top here of about 500,000 locations on the genome. If we blow up what's going on there, we can sort of narrow it down, and it turns out there's a gene called LIMBR1, LMBR1, which is known in mice and zebrafish and other contexts to be involved in pelvic spine variation. So there we go, we have a gene that causes pelvic spine variation. There might be another gene over here, but this is sort of an avenue of future research. Don't know what's going on with that one. But this is in one lake. This is in a lake called Muir Lake up near Edmonton. But then if we go to another lake out in Bighorn country called Shunda Lake, there's this other location over here on chromosome 1, and it's this TBX4 gene that causes this variation in pelvic spine presence absence. So not only between species, but even between populations, there's different genes that cause exactly the same differences. So to what extent, the big question I'm sort of interested in is, does evolution use the same genetic mechanisms in different populations to do the same thing? And it doesn't do that very much. So asking the question, is there a gene for that? Probably doesn't make much sense because it depends what population you're talking about, let alone what species you're talking about. So I do this work with a bunch of undergrads, get a lot of help from a lot of people, and funding from a variety of sources. So thanks to everyone, and thank you all.
Thanks very much, John. I won't ask what gene causes that anymore. Is there a gene for that? I'll forego that question as we move forward. The world of genetics is always fascinates me. I certainly have a soft spot for fish biology as well. So exciting work. I'll also note, and John showed some of his funders. John holds a highly prestigious NSERC award to help support his work. And I'd also like to note that he's been highly instrumental in our animal care program at Mount Royal and chairs our animal care committee. Our next award is the Knowledge Mobilization Award. And this award recognizes a researcher or scholar's innovative and sustained efforts to extend the original researcher scholarship contributions to diverse audiences. It should be sustained knowledge mobilization activities targeting quality academic journals and/or external audiences, including practitioners and policymakers. And the 2019-2020 award winner in the category of knowledge mobilization is Dr. Lynn Moorman. Lynn.
Thanks so much, Mike. I'll just share my screen here as well. My research is pretty ubiquitous. If you've ever used Google Maps or a navigation device, looked at blueprints or a model of a house or drawn a sketch map, looked at flood maps, or yes, even looked at a map of virus spread or infection case counts by region, you've been using technology to help you think spatially and to visualize geography. And that's really at the core of my research. So I just want to talk about what this research is, what it looks like, and then who are the end users and how does that information from my research get mobilized to them. And it's actually really important to kind of go back a bit, I think, to understand why that's really valuable to me. Almost 30 years ago, I found myself in northern Vietnam, where the country had an issue with unproductive lands. And they wanted to use this new fangled satellite imagery to try and map all of the northern areas and really inform policies to land use. And so I was there and using satellite imagery, and it became really important in my mind that this could be a tool that society could use for so many reasons. But the other things that really resonated with me were that this was not only important for policy, this new lens on the world and the results from looking at it was very important to the end users, the people on the ground. I also learned how to work in different cultures and how to share information even with people that don't speak the same language. And that's really because maps are universal. I came back from that, and again, this was almost 30 years ago. Canada was launching its first Earth observation satellite, and this is a radar satellite. It doesn't take photos or pictures or images the way that we think about like Google Earth. It's very different. So every image acquisition program had a massive educational component to it. And the space agency wanted not only all resources made, but curriculum developed for schools so that Canadian children had the advantage of being able to be spatially literate. And so I worked with educators. We developed a curriculum, a lot of resources, and I was very curious about this thinking spatially and how we use geographic technologies and representations. And wasn't this important in schools? And I found out, yeah, it's actually very important for brain development. It's very important for STEM success and learning. So I did work with educators, I do a lot of user studies. All of my work involves geographic technologies and the people that use them and the data that comes from them. Why is this important? Well, it's important for our own development. It's important for curriculum. I suspect my next knowledge mobilization activity is dealing with the Alberta Social Studies K-12 curriculum. But beyond that, surprisingly, Alberta is a hub for geospatial technologies. So we've got massive knowledge demand needs for people who can work in this field. And the field is so expansive, everything from business to medicine and health. So what does this research look like? And then how do I share it? Well, part of it is doing things like eye tracking. So you can see in the upper left, there's somebody's face and you can see the eyes. And what I'm doing is actually having them do some analysis of maps or images. I'm looking at where they're focused and can also tell how long they're gazing at something. And this gives a lot of insight into challenges in interpretation and how to use these representations. And does anyone ever look at the legend of a map? Typically, no. So this work was done in Australia and Canada, is funded by SSHRC, also some external grants with Tecterra. And how it's mobilized now is not only through, I've had journal articles, chapters in books. I've worked with Google, I work with National Geographic as their one of their Canadian advisors, but also the learning framework. So this is like a big curriculum guideline for Canada. Again, not used in Alberta. So some work to do there. But here's an example of curriculum that's actually created for Ontario, Geomatics, Geotechnologies in Action. That was from that original work with the space agency. It also informs things like the international geographic competitions. That's what you see on the bottom right, is the International Geolympiad. So all of the work about how we learn and how do we assess that learning, that's the information I'm trying to put out there. In terms of user design for software, creating tools like Google Earth on steroids, Google Earth that you can do analysis with. This has gone out to 22,000 educators across Canada. Ken Steele in his Academica Top 10 has written about it, press releases. So it goes out to industry and the public, really to end users, to try and get them aware of what's happening in the discipline, what are the tools, and how to best use them. I think students are one of the best vehicles for knowledge mobilization. So in my classes, we do community service learning, and we're trying to apply this research to solve community problems. Another lens on that is to look just at visualizations. So I'm trying to do immersive field work and virtual field work. This was supported by the Petro-Canada Young Innovator Program. And I've since been working with a group in the States, and we've been getting a lot of leverage from the geoheritage community. So we've been doing a lot of publications and invitations to go to places like Iceland and China and build virtual worlds. This is one of our examples. It ended up being kind of a virtual game of Catan, but we're really looking at things like machine learning and augmented reality for this now. And again, this goes out to teachers through workshops, goes to curriculum developers as well, and other virtual reality design users. There's physical models as well, so getting away from the digital. What if you don't have that access? So this is a hands-on geographic information system where you can put different layers over top of each other and analyze this. This was done in conjunction with the University of Calgary and research done in Australia and Canada as well. And then all of this has come together recently to take me up north to Canada's high Arctic, where the sea ice is thinning. You may have heard a lot of reports recently. So on CBC, CTV, National Geographic, all of that was based on one of the projects I'm involved in the north, Smart Ice, which is looking at geographic technologies to help map out on a community scale all of the different ice hazards and safety issues up north. So this is a co-development project. I spend quite a few of my days working with Inuit and co-developing this curriculum in terms of applying Inuit learning principles and values and trying to bring this idea of radar imagery, which we can use all year long, and trying to create learning resources and elements from that. And there we are on the sea ice with about 1,000 meters of ocean right below us, and trusting that our satellite imagery interpretation has served us well. We also develop tactile models. So I'm working with the U of C on this as well. Tactile models so you can feel the imagery, because again, it's not intuitive. So it's just different ways of researching how we can best learn and develop pedagogical structures for teaching geospatial technologies. Doing some really interesting stuff online now because we can't be there in person as I was supposed to be most of this last year. So far it's working out all right, but there's a whole suite of learning just in that alone. And I'm just going to finish up with something that I thought was really interesting last year. There was a turkey running around Calgary on the loose, and somebody asked for a map of where the turkey had been. So combining what we learned so far about geospatial-enabled citizen science through some of my classes and work with Dorothy Hill on our Bluebird app, I made a turkey app, a turkey tracker. And Calgary was so involved in working on this citizen science application and mapping where Turk had been. So we got a lot of good press from CBC and CTV around that. And to be honest, out of all the knowledge mobilization activities I've ever done, the Turk tracker gave, I had more interest from the public about geospatial technologies and how did they work and how could they learn more and how they could get involved. And so I have to thank Turk, who met an untimely demise, but he served me well in terms of promoting geography education and how to learn more about geospatial technologies.
Thanks, Lynn. And I was one of the people who was using the Turk tracker, and it's a great example of how to bring some of the best in high tech that's out there in geospatial analysis and display to raise public interest. And really, that's what this Knowledge Mobilization Award is all about. And again, for the audience, Lynn also holds a SSHRC grant to support some of this work and a number of other external awards as well. So congratulations, Lynn, on your Knowledge Mobilization Award.
Thanks very much, Mike.
Our next award is for Research and Scholarship Excellence. And this award celebrates excellence in research and scholarship by a tenured faculty member. That faculty member has to demonstrate a sustained program of research and scholarship with original and innovative contributions to their field of knowledge. And the 2019-2020 Research and Scholarship Excellence Award goes to Christy Tompkins-Lane. Christy, congratulations.
Thanks so much, Mike. Just share my screen. And just wanted to say thanks again for this award. It's a huge honor. And I'd like to say for all of those that are just starting out a research career at Mount Royal, it's been a wonderful place to grow and build my research program and career. So I'm going to be talking today about my research in digital health and wearable technology. So this slide, I included in all my presentations. It's really the fundamental underpinning of what I do, which is using technology to measure and understand human function and human health, and then leverage that technology to motivate people to change their behavior and become healthier, and then hopefully continue in this cycle of maintaining and improving health. So in wearable technology, really, we're still just at the beginning of the implications of this for medicine. It seems like, you know, Fitbits and things have been around for a while now, but in terms of how we're applying them in medicine and research, it's really just the beginning. So what I primarily look at is human function. So there are two areas of human function that we focus on, performance and capacity. Capacity is what you're able to do in a controlled setting, and performance, which is what I'm really interested in, is what are you doing in your actual daily life. So if you look at these pictures, on the left is capacity, it's a walking test in a clinic, and on the right is performance. What are you really wanting to do with your life and your function? And how we do this is using technology called accelerometers, little hardware that goes into wearable devices like your Apple Watch and your Fitbit. And using these, you can measure all characteristics of activity, volume, and intensity. So the first project, and this is now near and dear to my heart, is also finished, but wanted to talk about it, was the Spinal Stenosis Pedometer and Nutrition Lifestyle Intervention. And Lynn Lefebvre, one of the other awardees, was a co-investigator on this grant. It was a CIHR grant and looked at using e-health to improve, I'll put it all up here, to improve behavior, reduce fat mass, and reduce risk of surgical problems in people with something called lumbar spinal stenosis. And so we built a 12-week online intervention with pedometer step goals, nutrition education, all delivered online. And we're successful in improving all the things that we wanted to improve. So we saw that this intervention improved fat mass, physical activity, symptoms, and mental health. But really, the larger impact of this study was engaging patients in their own health and reducing their access to healthcare in the future. This is a highly risky population for diseases of inactivity. So just a very simple online intervention, we were able to improve their symptoms and keep them out of surgery longer. And then more recently, I was at Stanford, and Stanford School of Medicine as visiting professor for 2 years, 2014 and 2018. And in that time, co-founded the Stanford Wearable Health Lab, where over the last 10 or so years, 7 years, we've been doing research in the areas of digital health and developing new digital biomarkers with the goal of better understanding health and, again, providing better care to individuals. So what we're doing really is defining new endpoints or new digital biomarkers. So in this slide, you can see where you're using this platform to look for things like known measurement or known insight. What we're trying to find are new ways of measuring things that provide new insights. So one example of this is that we're working on looking at something called change points in physical activity in order to define profiles of people with back pain so that we can better understand them and better provide them with personalized physical activity recommendations. So this is a study that won an award a couple of years ago from the Spine Journal, where we defined phenotypes of both knee osteoarthritis and lumbar spinal stenosis. So we took these advanced accelerometry analysis methods, and really what we did is define patterns of activity in these groups. And what we're now able to do with that is use that information to provide personalized physical activity recommendations to those folks. We were able, with that information, was really quite impressive, to be able to diagnose osteoarthritis and spinal stenosis to 80% accuracy, just using data from 7 days of a wearable device. So very interesting stuff. Now what we're moving on to is personalized prescription, so using Apple Watches. And very simply what we do is we collect data over 7 days using an Apple Watch, and then we've built algorithms to predict and prescribe physical activity recommendations. And currently we're trying this out with people with back pain. And the current study that I'm working on with folks at the Department of Neurosurgery at Stanford is the future of spine surgery. So we're using Apple Watches to both measure physical activity and outcomes of spine surgery. And this is in partnership with Apple and also Stryker. And the goal here, I'll just skip by this, we're tracking 300 patients at Stanford who are undergoing surgery to better understand their falls risk and their outcomes of surgery. And then the next phase of this will be to use the app to actually provide patient education, including preoperative tools and rehabilitation protocols, and also to use the app to understand when a patient is falling off the curve and when we need to intervene and with what kind of intervention. And then somewhat unrelated, but I thought I should mention it, a lot of my other work is through something that I started about 10 years ago and continue to chair, which is the International Task Force on Spinal Stenosis. And a few years ago, we won an award for providing an international consensus on the diagnosis of this condition. And the work on this continues to date, where we're helping both clinicians and rehab professionals better diagnose and therefore better treat this prevalent condition. So my future research and where I'm continuing is working with wearables, and as the field of smartphones and wearable technology advances, we're going to continue to refine these understandings of function in these groups, and with the goal of identifying physical activity dose response curves, which means identifying for individuals what is the best amount of physical activity for them to improve their condition and health. So focusing on features that are most responsive to treatment. That's it for me. Thanks.
Thanks, Christy, and again, thanks for staying within the timelines. Again, a lot of information there, and wearable technologies just offers so much potential. The profile of your work continues to be significant and international, and I want to congratulate you again on this achievement award. Thanks very much.
Mike.
Our last presentation today, certainly not the least of the awards, and one of the most important ones. They're all important, but from a Mount Royal standpoint, our focus on undergraduate education makes the Undergraduate Research and Scholarship Supervision Award, I think, particularly important. It celebrates meaningful and sustained commitment to enriching student experience at Mount Royal by providing opportunities to participate in and disseminate research and scholarship. It identifies a substantial contribution to the growth and development of MRU students in research and scholarship competencies. I want to congratulate Ashok Krishnamurthy on being the 2019-2020 award winner for Undergraduate Research and Scholarship Supervision. Ashok?
Thank you so much, Mike. I want to begin by saying how humbled and how thankful I am to the nominators and the adjudication committee for giving me this award. This award will not have been possible if it wasn't for all of the listed undergraduate research assistants, starting all the way from Melissa, who was my first undergraduate research assistant in the year 2012, to the 3 recent hires. So I've known them only for 10 days now. They've all done exceptional work. They've all participated in conferences, won awards, been co-authors. So I want to first of all acknowledge all of my undergraduate student research assistants. Of course, this would not have been possible if it wasn't for the support from the Faculty of Science and Technology and the Office of Research, Scholarship, and Community Engagement. All of the IRGF, the SEED grants, the research grants, the URDF, FCTF, I can go on and on. Thank you so much. The focus of my research is to track the spatial spread of COVID-19 in a large geographical area. So this particular research focuses on the spatial spread of coronavirus in Nigeria. Nigeria is one of the largest countries in Africa with an estimated population of 206 million. The small state here on the bottom, the coastal state called Lagos, with an estimated population of more than 10 million, is a major financial hub. So you can imagine how lockdown would have affected not just that state, but the entire country. To put it in perspective, if Lagos by itself was a nation, it would be the 5th largest economy in all of Africa. So there is a huge impact on the rapid spread of coronavirus. For our research, I use and I insist on using free and open source tools. So some of the tools we use day in and day out are listed on this frame here. R program is my go-to tool for all my simulations. And in this virtual world, I interact with my research assistants through these whiteboard tools like Jamboard. We do joint collaborative paper writing using Overleaf. Spatial maps are all developed using QGIS and Panoply tools. Interactive flowcharts are done using this tool called Lucidchart. And our population data is obtained from this free and open source area called WorldPop. So what you're about to see is a short animation or an MP4 video of sorts of what our projection of coronavirus spread and the active cases in Nigeria starting from today, April 5th, or rather April 6th through July 5th, 2021. Now, there is a play button on the bottom. I'm going to hit play. Before I do that, I have seeded the number of active cases as of yesterday in all of Nigeria. And this simulation is printed at 5 frames per second for 90 days. So that's the July 5th prevalence map. Our estimate is that by July 5th, there is going to be a lot of active cases in this state called Nasarawa, and building hotspot in the state called Adamawa. And of course, there are going to be major hotspots in Lagos, the reverse state, among other states. So our projections, I also want to be very careful about the use of word projections, not predictions, because we have to be very careful. As of yesterday, the cumulative deaths were 2,058 in Nigeria. We are here. And 90 days later, our projections says that there's going to be close to 3,000 deaths if nothing changes. This is called as the baseline scenario. Obviously, we have multiple scenarios we are exploring. The scenarios where there is strict lockdown, mask mandates, and then there are also scenarios for gross underreporting. Behind all of this is a mathematical model and an epidemic model in a schematic form. Here is the flowchart. So we have 5 epidemic compartments where individuals are initially susceptible and they become exposed when they come in contact with an infectious individual. They remain in this exposed compartment for an incubation period or a time delay, and then they move to this infectious compartment, and then they remain in this infectious compartment for a duration, after which they either recover or sadly die due to the disease. Now, what we are trying to do is extend our model, but one thing we all have to be clear is the models are only as good as the assumptions that you put into the model, as famously said by Dr. Tony Fauci, right? So in this model, we assume that individuals on a given grid cell travel a maximum of 25 kilometers per day, and they come back to their home cell. So human mobility patterns play a crucial role in how fast the disease spreads. Our next steps are to incorporate a vaccinated compartment. So as you can see, World Health Organization is working very hard. As of March 2nd, the Serum Institute in India, the largest manufacturer of vaccines, coronavirus vaccine, has dropped 4 million vaccines in Nigeria. And the Nigerian government has an ambitious plan of vaccinating anywhere from 20 to 30% of its population by midsummer. We are also adopting 3 more new open source and free tools as our next step towards the research. We have several student conferences coming up. I personally would like you to attend Angela Lee's talk 3 days from now at 10 a.m. on Thursday. And we have presentations at the ERSCA, CSSC, WNAR, and CUMC conferences. And we have 3 manuscripts in preparation. So thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thanks so much, Ashok. It's so exciting to see undergraduate students be involved in this real-world, high-quality work. The efforts that you put in are outstanding, and to end on the upcoming dissemination opportunities that you provided for your students is absolutely fabulous. Thank you, and congratulations on the award. That brings us to the end of today's award ceremony. I wish we were doing this in person and we could shake hands or hug the candidates and or the recipients and celebrate afterwards. We'll take a rain check on that. Hopefully get together on this sooner rather than later. Thanks to all of you who attended via live stream. I was reminded that folks on live stream don't see that chat box. It's not hard to find Research and Scholarship Days events on the MRU website. You can go to the ORSC homepage or just type in Research and Scholarship Days anywhere, and you'll find all the information about the great list of events. Certainly encourage everyone to participate. Once again, a special congratulations to all of the 2019-2020 recipients. Thank you so much for joining us here today. And I will officially close our award ceremony. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, and congratulations all.
Thank you.
Oh, there we go. Thanks. Bye.